Welcome back to my channel. I'm Traben, and in today's video, we'll be doing a review for What the River Knows. I am reviewing both the Barnes & Noble Book Club books and my Fairy Loot box books, and this is both of those. Up here we have the Barnes & Noble YA Book Club edition, and here we have the Fairy Loot edition. The Barnes & Noble Book Club edition is very, very similar to the regular edition. It's just, I think, different colors. One aspect I really liked about it was it did have these hieroglyphs on the cover, and within the first 20 or so pages, you're given a key that you can go back and figure out what that says. So I thought that was pretty cool. It also has some nice portraiture inside that I felt was very evocative of the tone that this book is going for. Fairy Loot version, in typical Fairy Loot fashion, has a very nice sprayed edges. It has what I would argue is the better cover. I like this one a little bit more. And if you prefer the original cover, then the inside cover is basically a stylized version of that with the gold reflective surface. Inner flap is this very lovely red hair in the river. What the River Knows follows Inez, our protagonist. She is the daughter of Egyptian archaeologists in what would basically be colonial age, but set in a world that is definitely not our own for a couple of obvious reasons. So Inez has always dreamed of joining her parents. Both of her parents are archaeologists. She's always dreamed of joining her parents and participating in the excavations, and they've always denied her. Her birthday comes around, and she thinks that this is finally going to be the time when she gets what she wants. They're going to invite her. She has this whole fantasy of them welcoming her, and instead she gets the letter that year, and it lets her know that her parents are missing and presumed dead. It then gives her instructions on what to do next. So she travels to Egypt. She lives in Argentina, so she travels from Argentina to Egypt and tries her best to insert herself into her uncle's operation, because her parents were basically funding her uncle's work. They're trying to find the tomb of Cleopatra. It seems like a interesting setup and a fun adventure story. It does have this extra layer of magic over it, but the magic is very loosely defined, I would say, and treated in a way that does not interact overly much with this adventure plot. It's not a world where characters are wielding magic spells and having these, wizard fights with each other. The magic that exists here is very old. Magic has been kind of lost in the modern day, but if you find an ancient item where magic was infused into it, the less people that touch an item, the more magic it has. The more it is used, the more it's touched, the more diluted it gets. All the magic shown in the book is either mundane or it's very utilitarian. So, for example, there's a pot of water and you close the lid and you open it up again and it's full of water. That's miraculous, yes. But the way that everybody treats it is so oh yeah, check out this cool thing we have. Oh, now it's got more water in it. And no one's amazed by this miracle. They're that's very handy. That's very useful. But no one's in awe of this magic. In other cases, you have Inez, who has touched an item from Cleopatra's tomb, and now she's in tune with it. She can feel where the tomb might be. That is one of the ways that she manages to ultimately get herself in this situation. If you are someone who has looked into plotting for modern day books, advice from writers such as Jim Butcher or Brandon Sanderson, there's this idea of how you create conflict. Your character wants something, and you can answer that question in one of four ways. Okay? So you could say yes. Like the question is always does the character get what they want in a scene, right? And so you can say yes, and that's fine, but it's very boring, right? If you say yes all the time, then there's no conflict within your story. Okay? You can say yes, but that's a little bit more interesting, right? So the character gets what they want, but there's an unforeseen consequence. Something else happens. There's another bit of drama or conflict inserted in the story, right? You could say no, they just don't get what they want. Again, that's kind of boring. It's kind of like in D&D when someone's trying to scale a wall and they don't roll high enough to scale the wall. So now you're just stuck with like trying to think of another way to do the thing. So no is a very boring way to answer this question. Another thing you can do, the last way you can answer that question, is no, they don't get what they want, and furthermore. So now, not only do they not get what they want, but it's also exacerbated. There's something even worse happening. With this book in particular, I was very aware of these shifting conflicts that were happening, especially early on as Inez is trying to get into the camp and be part of this excavation. So there would be times where, you know, her uncle is very much trying to deny her coming to Egypt and staying there. So he's trying to send her off. And so she has to, you know, very sneakily get around that. And again, especially early book, it felt like every chapter was, this is what is being denied Inez. How is she going to work around it and try to overcome that obstacle? And then in overcoming it, she usually creates more problems for herself. Late book, we get some very significant moments of things that Inez wants, more than just like being on this dig. And even those come with caveats, come with repercussions. And so as far as the plot goes, it does a very good job of keeping it moving and keeping the conflict tight, but always shifting. Inez makes progress as she works through the story, but there's always something that is getting in her way. There's always some other bit of trouble that she's having to overcome. And I do feel like it builds and escalates as the story goes on. There are some issues with this being another first in a series of books. I've been reading a lot of YA lately that is not able to wrap up the narrative satisfactorily in this first book and still leave room for a sequel. You should go into them knowing that by the end of the book, things are actually worse than when they started, and nothing that we really were trying to resolve at the beginning of the book has actually wrapped up. We haven't really succeeded in doing much of anything. Talk about the characters a little bit. So we have Inez and we have her uncle. Again, he is trying to stymie her in being part of this this operation. We also have his like right-hand man and his enforcer, Wit, and Wit and Inez have this kind of, I wouldn't call it enemies to lovers. I don't think that it's ever either of those extremes at the beginning or the end. But they are antagonistic to romantic. And I'm not going to say that this is a slow burn romance, but it is at least appropriately paced, in my opinion. there is a good bit where they are at each other's throat, and they are trying to one up each other and being very sassy. And Inez is a strong female character. She's able to hold her own. She's able to do surprising things, and there's a begrudging respect that's built up from that. And then from there, we start getting some romantic feelings. The very last page of this book really throws a wrench in that entire development. And I'm honestly not sure what I'm supposed to take away from the very last revelation that is made in this book. A fairly strong plot. We've got characters that I'm jiving with as far as their relationship goes. I do feel like the story falls apart a little in the end. So I'm going to mention a few things that some would maybe consider spoilers. I'll put a tag up for where to skip ahead, but I really would not consider this a spoiler. It's just an event that happens later in the book that seems a little bit out of nowhere. So there comes a point where a character mentions that there's this ball that is going to happen, and then it suddenly becomes about like getting dressed up and putting on makeup and dancing with these boys, and all the main cast show up to this party. So like honestly, like maybe I missed something. Maybe there's something earlier in the book where they were like, oh yeah, well this ball is going to happen. We should go to it. But it really did seem to come out of nowhere. I felt that a little odd. And then that was juxtaposed very shortly after with some of the highest tension in the book. The extreme shift we had in the end of the book. But the biggest thing for me really is the last page. I don't want to spoil it beyond saying that it throws into doubt a lot of what has been built up over the course of this book. And a lot of what is happening in the story comes down to trust. And like, who do you trust? Who can you believe? And so we are constantly shifting that story. So I could see a sequel having more revelations about what's really going on, and that becoming a little bit tiresome. We did spend a lot of this book with, should we trust this person? Should we trust this person? Are they a good guy? Are they a bad guy? Are they someone who is going to come and help us? Or is this person the one we should put our faith in? And the end suggests that there's more of that in the future, and I can feel that getting a little bit much. I can feel that getting a little bit repetitive. So I'm a little wary of picking up the rest of the series. Also, a decently long book at around 400 pages. So there's also the time commitment to consider. This gets 4 out of 5 stars for me. I don't think the end is so egregious that it undoes the positive aspects of the book. I still really enjoyed the world building. I liked the magic, the way that it was kind of this magical realism take where magic is treated as fairly commonplace and well known and sort of mundane in a lot of cases. I liked the relationship between the leads. It's normally a sticking point for me. These dual trajectory narratives where we have to have the main story and also these two characters have to fall in love. Some missteps, in my opinion, toward the end. Revelations about Whit's background and his life back in England kind of undercut some of what is happening in the story. The progression of the relationship worked if we're going to have it in there, which seems like this is YA standard. So of the relationships I've read recently, one of the stronger ones. And then I liked the mystery at the core of this plot of trying to figure out what happened to Inez's parents and some of the answers we got there. It doesn't quite stick the landing. It does feel like mostly set up for a second book, but an effective one, and one that was entertaining to read. Besides the plot, besides the characterization, the world building, there is peppered throughout, and Nez is an artist, so she is drawing the different items around the dig site, and like she'll draw pillars or she'll draw a statuette, and those will all be like in line in the text. And so that was really fun and kind of reminded me a little bit of Shalin from Stormlight Archives, and a character that I really enjoy. So I liked that aspect of her character as well. I would definitely recommend this if you are a fan of YA titles, if Egyptology is your thing. It felt unique. It felt different. I don't see a lot of Egypt-focused fantasy lately, so that was something that the setting was at least new and engaging. That's going to do it for this review. I'm glad it turned out that this one was one of the stronger YA titles, because now I own 2 copies of it. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below if you've read this. I feel like it was making its rounds maybe late last year, when it was, I think this was December's YA title. So I know it was gaining some traction then. So if you've read it, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, I hope your reading journey is going well. And until the next one, take care. And I don't want to talk. I don't want to spoil it.